an angel of death is?
Like the Grim Reaper?
No, in the context of serial killers.
All I know is that death will be imminent. No, I have no idea though.
Oh.
I mean, in a serial killer. No?
Well, an angel of death is like a common name. I don't know if it's super common, but I have heard the term before where it's a healthcare worker who basically decides to play God and
Oh!
yeah,
Okay, that makes more sense,
they
yeah.
like put their patients in positions where they could potentially die so that they could come in and save them.
Oh my god, I heard this one. Sorry, mini.
No, go ahead.
I heard this one like nurse, like it was like a podcast of like this nurse who kept killing her patients because she one wanted like the power, and two because if she like kept saving these people or like if they didn't get saved then they'd die, and then she'd be like, oh no, poor little me, I'm so like distraught, so that the doctor would fall more in love with her.
Was this a Stephanie Sue?
Of course.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, because I heard the
yeah.
same one. Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah. So well, today we're not talking about Angel of Death.
Oh.
We're talking about Angel of Life, but it was just a cool little. Yeah, we're talking about specifically an angel of the battlefield, a one Miss Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross.
Love.
Intro. So, Clarissa Clara Harlow Barton was born on December 25th,
On Christmas?
Christmas Day, 1821, in North Oxford, Massachusetts. She was the youngest of 5 children to Stephen and Sarah Barton. Stephen was a successful... Stephen? I don't know. He was a successful farmer, and it can be assumed that Sarah was probably a housewife, because there's not a ton of information on her, and most wives didn't work during this time period. But we do know she was not very nice to Clara. Clara was described as shy, but a very dedicated and hard young working girl who excelled at school. Her siblings were described as more of parents than siblings. I don't know if it's because they were a lot older than her, or just like they weren't like super nice to her, or just like were more authoritative. Not really sure why, but that's how they were described. But when Clara was 11, her older brother David fell off a barn roof and was bedridden for 2 years. And during those 2 years, Clara was his like caretaker, which was her first exposure to like nursing and like medicine. And then as she got older, worked as a bookkeeper and a clerk for her older brother.
Okay, so when she was 16, 2 famous phrenologists, the Fowler brothers, visited her town and declared that being a teacher would cure Clara of her shyness. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the field of phrenology, it's a field of pseudoscience that studies contours and curves of the brain and skull to determine personality traits. Oh wow, that's really dumb. Anyway, so the guy who invented it was more or less like, you've got a big forehead, a 5 head even, 6 head, so therefore you're reflective. You're a reflective person. Yeah, just in case you were skeptical, phrenology has been wholly discredited by modern science, but that is what they were working with back in the day. So in 1839, at the age of 18, Clara starts working as a school teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. We have mentioned countless times in the past that being a teacher was one of the very few respectable careers that a woman could have back in this time period. Clara was often praised for producing exceptional students with physically punishing them?
Without
Oh!
physically
Okay,
punishing
so
them.
she did not physically punish them, and her students were great.
Yes. So in 1853, at the age of 24, I didn't write the age, but I do remember she was 24. She founded a school in Bordenton, New Jersey, at her brother's mill, which served as a school for the workers' children. It was the town's first free public school, and became so much of a success that they made it bigger, they made it better, and then they hired a man. We were doing so good. And in addition to hiring the man, they made the man the principal, and they made him paid twice. Like, his salary was twice that of Clara's. And Clara said she would never work for less than a man, so she quit. She was like, no, goodbye. Peace. So soon after, Clara was hired as a recording clerk at the U.S. Patent Office in Washington, D.C., making her the first woman to be appointed to such a position. She was paid $1,400 annually, which would be equivalent to approximately $54,000 in 2026. More than what we make. But the interesting thing is Clara was actually paid the exact same as her male colleagues. Like, there was no discrepancy. They treated her exactly the same. Well, her boss treated her exactly the same. Coworkers, not so much. They harassed her, tried to get her fired, and, like, did not like her. But her boss was very much like, no, equality, women. But sadly, her boss changed the following year to the Secretary of the Interior, Robert McClelland, and he demoted her to a copyist. Sorry. Basically, instead of, like, actually doing the work that she was doing, she was just spent all day copying papers, and lowered her salary because he didn't approve of women working in government jobs. So from her really nice, like, $1,400 annually, like, flat fixed salary, she was instead now paid 10 cents for every 100 words printed or copied.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, 2 years after that, the Buchanan administration fired her. But luckily, she was able to come back as a copyist. Oh, yay. After the election of Abraham Lincoln. So, in my opinion, like, what the heck? Because she clearly can do the job of a recording clerk and works just as hard as her male colleagues. So, it just kind of seems like discrimination on the basis of sex. During this time, she moved into a boarding house 2 blocks from the U.S. Patent Office, which is now the Clara Barton Museum. In 1861, the American Civil War started with the Battle of Fort Sumter. Side note, it is so strange for us in Charleston just to go to the beach and be like, oh yeah, that's where the Civil War started. We were there like literally just the last weekend because I really wanted to go explore the fort. Anyway, yeah, so we also have the Hunley, which was the first submarine to sink a warship. It's just a little interesting that Charleston is a historic city, but also historically racist. Historic nonetheless, but you know. Anyways, back in the north, there was a militia called the 6th Massachusetts Infantry that was attacked by a mob of Confederate sympathizers, which became known as the Baltimore Riot and caused some of the first casualties of the Civil War.
These soldiers were transported to D.C. to shelter at the U.S. Capitol building, but the news of the riot actually reached D.C. before the soldiers on the train actually did. Clara, along with a lot of other women, went to the train station to greet and care for the soldiers. When she got there, she realized that the men from the infantry were actually from her hometown. She was from Massachusetts. And she was like, they were coming down, and she was like, oh my god, I know you, I know all of you, actually. But space was super limited, and so the 6th Massachusetts Infantry slept on the floor of the U.S. Capitol building, and then there was another regiment, the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. They were literally sleeping on shelves in the patent office just to, like, protect themselves from, like, mobs. But Clara saw a need and quickly began bringing shoulders. Oh my god. She began bringing soldiers supplies, nursing them, and bonded really closely with them, and she affectionately called them, like, my boys. She started collecting supplies from all over New England and soon had more than she knew what to do with, but she was still determined to distribute them to all the soldiers. And so, Clara's life of humanitarianism and aid began.
Clara had to. Oh, okay. Clara had to petition the government to allow her to go to the war front, as she knew that that is where she was needed the most, more or less. In 1862, she was granted permission to drive a 4-mule wagon, yippee mules, from Washington to the Battle of Cedar Mountain in Virginia. She set up field hospitals in behind the lines to aid soldiers and bring supplies. People's reaction to Clara's arrival seemed to have been a little mixed. On one hand, there were records of her being called vulgar names by the soldiers, assuming that she was a prostitute, because the only women who hung around the camps were apparently prostitutes. On the other hand, someone wrote, I thought that I can't read. I thought that night, if heaven ever sent out an angel, she must be one. Her assistance was so timely. This is where Clara got her name, Angel of the Battlefield. Not long after that, she was traveling through Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. Not prostituting, obviously.
Giving aid and care. In 1864, she was named head nurse for one of General Benjamin Butler's units, even though she had no formal nursing training. She said about her time on the battlefield, quote, I always tried to succor the wounded, to help the wounded until medical aid and supplies could come. I could run the risk. It made no difference to anyone if I was shot or taken prisoner. Basically, she was acting as a nurse at her own peril. Soldiers back then had no regard for avoiding nurses or wounded, and they weren't very good shots. Like, if you ever have seen, like, a musket from back in the day, you can aim. There's no guarantee the bullet's gonna go where you want it to go, but you can try.
It's so crazy how war was back then.
I honestly think that's why, like, wars lasted so long.
I agree, because they just line up and be like, pew pew,
But,
your
like,
turn.
they, like, miss.
Right, and then they're like, oh, you, like, got my coattail. Haha. Like, now we fight with freaking drones.
And bombs.
And ugh.
Bro, I one time got mixed up between an IUD and an IED. I think I was, like, in the middle
Why
of,
are
like,
they putting bombs in people?
I remember this was, like, history class in like, high school, and I said, like, IUD. And so I was like, an IUD? I was like, yeah, like, the weapons of mass destructions,
No.
the IUDs.
Someone called the bomb squad. She's getting an IUD.
And my teacher was like, Tisha, I think you mean an IED. And I was like, yeah, are they not the same thing?
Oh my god. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. But anyways, so Clara's life was endangered anytime she stepped on the battlefield, although I don't know how much, because they clearly were not very good shots. But in addition to all of what she did for the Civil War, she also helped former enslaved people prepare for a life of freedom. If you could not tell, she was with the Union, not the Confederacy.
Duh. So Clara went above and beyond by helping to connect soldiers back to their families and locate missing men. In 1865, she opened the Office of Correspondence with Friends of the Missing Men of the United States Army with the permission of President Abraham Lincoln.
It's a really long name.
Yeah, which was able to continue her mission of helping soldiers and their families and providing closure. It had been said that Barton and her staff answered over 63,000 letters and were able to provide closure to the families of over 22,000 deceased soldiers. She was able to do this with the help of a soldier and POW, Dorrance Atwater.
Do you know what a POW is?
Would you like to clarify?
A prisoner of war?
A POW, a prisoner of war. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry.
Did you not do military in high school?
I did not do the military, no. No, but I genuinely forgot what the acronym stands for. But I have seen it before, and you just brought me back so many memories.
I'm sorry. Prisoner of war.
No,
Dorrance
it's okay.
Atwater.
All right, well.
Dorrance is an interesting name.
Yeah, that's why I paused for a second, because I was like, am I reading this right? Or...
Yeah, it's Dorrance.
All right. So Mr. Dorrance here helped her. Of the 22,000 missing/presumed deceased soldiers, 13,000 of them had been kept at Andersonville Prison in Georgia. This prison was grossly overcrowded, and the living prisoners were responsible for burying the deceased. That's terrible. Dorrance had to keep an inventory of the dead as part of his labor, but he secretly duplicated the list. So when he was finally freed, he enlisted the help of Clara Barton to do so. Together, they identified all of the men, gave them marked graves, and established the site as a national cemetery.
After the Civil War in 1869, Clara traveled to Switzerland, where she learned of the International Red Cross that was established in Geneva in 1864. She was inspired by the movement and even volunteered to provide aid during the Franco-Prussian War from 1870 to 1871. She provided supplies and care to the French and established hospitals for the Prussians. So she wasn't playing sides. She was just like, help is help. You guys are dying. Let me help out. So upon her return to the United States, she advocated to create the American sector of the Red Cross. The U.S. government was very hesitant. She met with Rutherford B. Hayes, who she tried to convince to sign... Oh my god, She tried to convince him to sign the Geneva Convention, but he refused. He thought that this would create some sort of alliance that could potentially drag the U.S. into foreign wars, and we're so good at avoiding foreign wars. Right. Anyways, regardless, Clara founded the American Red Cross, May 21st, 1881, without federal support. Like, you don't need federal support to, like, create it, but if they wanted to be part of, like, the international organization, they had to have the charter, or a president's approval. But later, She was actually elected as the first president of the American Red Cross, and she ended up bringing the subject of signing the Geneva Convention to President James Garfield. He was totally prepared to sign it. He was like, "Yes, Queen, you got it. I'm gonna sign this." Then he got assassinated, so he couldn't sign it. But then his successor, President Chester Arthur, that's a weird name, signed it in 1882, and then it was ratified by the Senate. Basically, American Red Cross is finally part of the International Red Cross. Yippee! Also, fun fact, I didn't realize the symbol of the Red Cross is just the Switzerland flag inside out.
Oh, wait, that makes so much sense.
Because it was started in Switzerland.
That's funny.
I just was like, yeah, Red Cross, that means first aid. Nope, it was literally just the inside out of Switzerland's flag.
Swag. Okay, so while Clara was the president, she focused her efforts on domestic disaster relief. The organization helped provide funding and clothing to victims of the Michigan forest fire in 1881, the Johnstown flood in Pennsylvania in 1889, the Sea Islands hurricanes in South Carolina in 1893, the 1900 Galveston hurricane, and more. Clara's humanitarian aid wasn't just limited to the United States. She traveled to Cuba, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. That is an insane amount of traveling, especially for the time period. Clara was the president of the American Red Cross until 1904 when she retired. She received many awards such as the Prussian Iron Cross and the Russian Silver Cross, but she was not done. She had a lot more selflessness left to give. Just a year later, in 1905, she founded the National First Aid Association of America and was also its president. It is unclear how this organization was just supposed to be different from the Red Cross. I suppose it was more focused on the emergency preparedness and the development of first aid kits, but it kind of just seems like she found another route to do what she cared about, but the organization unfortunately fizzled out shortly after its founding.
Clara passed away on April 12th, 1912 in her home in Glen Echo, Maryland at the age of 91, which was a really, really long life for people who lived around the Civil War era.
Mm-hmm.
She was buried in the Barton Family Cemetery in Oxford, Massachusetts. Her home in Glen Echo was dedicated in 1974 and was the first National Historic Site to be dedicated to the achievement of a woman. Today, we spoke about one determined woman stepping into the battlefield, not with a weapon, but bandages, food, and very fierce compassion. Clara Barton didn't wait for permission to do what was right. She saw suffering and she showed up. From the blood-soaked fields of the Civil War to the founding of the American Red Cross, Clara redefined what it means to serve. She believed that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when guided by empathy and courage.